Hey everyone, welcome to Sales Personalization versus Sales Automation. I think you're really going to get a lot out of this session. Thank you for joining us. My name is Ron De Appolonia. I'm a knowledge transfer specialist here at Sales for Life. I'm also the individual that trains our internal sales team on account-based and channel-based selling. So I'm really excited to have these two guys, TK, founder and CEO of ToutApp, as well as Cameron Brain, founder and CEO of EveryoneSocial, to talk about this this new evolution that's facing us. Of course, I can see in our space at Sales for Life, I can see how as we add more personalization in our approach, our conversion rates go up, our penetration rates go up. And as soon as we start to try to do that at volume and drop the personalization, of course, our results start to diminish. And so we really came up with this phenomenal idea to get these two gentlemen online and talk about these issues and how we can really take advantage of bringing these two ideas together. So what we're going to do today is talk about why personalized sales outreach, factors that determine the level of attention that each lead should receive, which is going to vary, of course, based on the size of the account, the volume that you're doing, and ways to personalize your sales team's outreach. And of course, we'll leave a little bit of time at the end for your questions. So I just want to start off here with why personalizing sales outreach. So we can see all of the research here. 83% of executives at enterprise companies find it important that outreach be personalized. We've got research from Gartner, and we can see from all ends. Certainly, even research from HubSpot comes in that HubSpot is saying, look, the biggest complaint that clients have of salespeople are that you don't understand my business. You really didn't do the research. It's not personalized enough. So would love to hear, turn this over to TK for a second to see your insights. But to start off, Cameron, what are your thoughts on this issue going on here in the evolution of the market?
Yeah. Hi everyone. Thank you for making time to join our webinar here. And yeah, I mean, I think it's, it kind of goes without saying, I mean, in the sense that, for us in our business, we primarily work with companies that have a little bit more complex, a little bit longer sales cycle. And, so there's oftentimes a lot of time and a lot of steps that go into a sale. I'm talking about kind of big companies like Dell or HP or Symantec, just as some examples. And, I think at the simplest level, personalization just produces results, right? I mean, ultimately, at the very beginning of a sales cycle, or even, frankly, post-close, looking to, expand the solution's footprint or upsell or whatever it might be, personalization just moves things along. At kind of the numbers level, it's going to produce, more appointments and opportunities, and then, of course, as things progress, it just, produces further results. So we'll get into kind of like how and why and what matters from a personalization standpoint. But certainly virtually every company that we work with in a sales capacity, aspires to include more amounts of personalization, either generated by kind of the sales reps themselves or facilitated by things like other kind of intelligence and AI components.
Yeah, very interesting. TK, what are your thoughts? Oh, TK, can't hear you.
Oh, thanks for having me. I was on mute. Sorry about that.
No worries.
I think personalization is top of mind for everyone today. And what I think is really interesting is I think we're coming up on an era of personalization. And the reason for that is we're coming away from an era of extreme automation. So before sales, you didn't have a choice. You had to talk to every person, and you had to cold call them. Nowadays, over the last 3 to 4 years, a whole amount of automation has been introduced, where it's super easy for a rep to hit a button and the same email can go out to 100 people, and that is no longer working.
Right.
And so the pendulum is swinging back, and we're trying to figure out how we can leverage technology to be personalized while getting the type of scale you get from being automated. And I'm excited to talk about how you can use technology to be personalized while still doing a lot more than you would do by just cold calling one person at a time.
Okay. This sounds really exciting. We're definitely trying to figure that out on our end as well. What have you got?
Yeah, so we have a few different concepts today, and the big thing we want people to walk away from this webinar is some sort of framework to think about when is automation necessary and good, and when is personalization important. And obviously everything is not black and white, there are shades of gray. And so the first concept is, when do you choose personalization, when do you choose automation? And the second concept we'll talk about today is, how do you actually mix the both, have some personalization, have some automation to get some scale? And then thirdly, we'll talk about some examples of how we've incorporated it, and we can just have a discussion around how it works in practice. The first thing we wanted to talk about, which you'll see in this slide, is automation and personalization can be a very easy choice based on the type of sales cycle or sales process that you have. We've seen companies, and we've worked with companies at ToutApp. We build a platform that helps salespeople run campaigns and also enable them with the right messaging. We've worked with small companies, and we've worked with large companies like GE and Siemens. And the big differentiator in your strategy needs to be based on what type of sales process you're running. If you are selling to very small businesses, you can close a deal within the first 30 minutes of a phone call. It's a very transactional sales process. And for a very transactional sales process, it's all about having one smooth motion, repeatability, and automation works really great for that. If on the other end of the spectrum, if you are selling engines or rockets or massive computer systems, if you have a true enterprise sale where multiple stakeholders are involved and it takes years to get to a deal, well, you want absolutely no automation. You want complete personalization. Every touch point is important and needs to be catered to the audience that you're going to. And I think that when we present this as a framework, people say, oh, obviously that makes sense. But when you actually go and talk to reps, you start to understand that even in the transactional side, people and reps are doing a lot of manual work. And also you find surprises in the enterprise side where reps are mailing it in and not really personalizing. So while this seems obvious, it's not really common practice. And so getting very conscious about what type of sales process you have and what the right amount of personalization and automation should exist is the first step in this giant debate that exists today on how much to have, how much personalization automation to have.
Okay. Cameron, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I think TK just kind of laid out the whole picture there quite well. You know, as I said, for us and our business and our clients, we pretty much exclusively work with larger companies, enterprises, you know, companies kind of with 5,000 employees and above, generally speaking. And you know, what we see is really what TK described is, I would say it's twofold. It's both oftentimes sales reps, you know, internal, external, kind of mailing it in, or maybe relying a little bit too much on some automation technologies. But you know, the other thing is that personalization is just kind of confusing and difficult, and I think at least historically synonymous with a lot of manual input, right? Like, you think about personalizing a letter to someone or an email, or even a text, you know, or a tweet, something that would be, you know, even in the public domain. And oftentimes people get hung up on that. Like, how should I be personalizing this thing? What are best practices? What should I be including in this message that I'm sending this person or this group of people? And so, you know, that's really kind of our area of focus. You know, and I think where we see things headed is helping people to, you know, personalize it in the way that they see fit, really just by providing them with relevant options based on, whoever it is that they're communicating with.
Okay. Now there's issues here as well that I see of, and I can see, I know what the next slide is, but it's just a natural lead into, the inbound versus outbound. So in some cases you have organizations dealing only with inbound, some only with outbound, and some with both. How do you navigate your way around personalizing, say, outbound versus inbound?
I can take that first. First of all, I think there's a big misconception on what personalization means. And a lot of times when you think about personalization, Cameron said, right, people think about a bunch of manual work around this person. And I've seen tutorials on go on LinkedIn, find out what college they went to and what their favorite sports team is, and mention in the first sentence that, hey, I'm also a fan of this sports team. And some people call that personalization. And I think that's a huge misconception. That's manual, that's repetitive. Personalization is how do you make the first sentence of an email or the content you're sharing or the way you're communicating with that person relevant to their job and how you're going to solve a problem for them. And so that same thing around personalization applies to whether they're inbound or outbound as well. And the whole idea of personalization is not to just make it cater to their likes and dislikes, but about how do you actually say the right things that's relevant to where they are in the buying process, what their role is, what their business problems are, and how you can solve them. How do you make their lives better? That's what you're trying to do with personalization, not just forge an artificial connection and relationship. And so when you think about it that way, first, personalization becomes a lot easier. It's less so about what sports team they like. It's more about what's their role, what type of industry are they in, what do they care about, what are the big trends in that space, and what are they worried about. These are all things you can find out from research, and it can apply not just to that one person in that one company. It can apply to a whole segment of those kind of people. If you do it that way, you're actually being very personalized. I think that's the first thing to get your head around as you're approaching personalization at scale.
Yeah, that makes sense. So it sounds like there's a confusion, I guess, between initially trying to engage someone versus personalizing. That's very, very interesting. Okay, and I guess that would be outbound that you were referring to. What do you think? How do you manage this? How do you navigate around it on inbound, or is it the same thing?
Yeah, so in this slide, there's a few things that we want to highlight that we get people to think about. First of all, you want to recognize that when you are communicating with someone, whether it's during the sales process or you're trying to generate pipeline, they are in different stages of awareness. So naturally, if you are going outbound to them, they have no idea who you are, and they are probably not even looking to buy. And so you have to start from basic principles of who are you, what can you offer me, that kind of thing. If you're dealing with inbound, well, they've done some research and they've spent time reaching out to you. They're in a different stage of the buying process. So you have to personalize based on that journey, right? Sending someone a case study of how your solution made X for this company may be too premature for an outbound contact, but is perfectly legit for inbound, depending on how you think about it. And so the first step in thinking between inbound and outbound is recognizing what stage they're in. The second part of it is it's really easy to say, oh, we're going to be fully personalized or we're going to be fully automated. What we try to get people to think about is tiering of accounts, or thinking of accounts or leads in terms of value. If you think about it from a tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 perspective, tier 1 or high value inbound leads or highly engaged leads are people that they're just more likely to buy. They're right in your sweet spot. Let's just say you're selling social software to VPs of marketing and they tend to invest in that as soon as they take a job. Well, for outbound, they should be in a tier 1 account and you should identify people that are brand new VPs of marketing and they should go in tier 1 because they're more likely to buy.
Okay.
Same goes for inbound. There's certain signals where you'll see that they're very highly likely to buy. And so you tier them. And when you tier it that way, you can do things that are completely automated for tier 3 and lower value. You can do everything very personalized for tier 1. And then you can kind of do a mix so you get some leverage for tier 2. And that way, it's not either or, black and white. You have a strategic way of prioritizing who you need to reach out to.
Okay. Cameron, any thoughts? I know we're big users of EveryoneSocial, so I'm kind of trying to wrap my head around the ideas here and EveryoneSocial and obviously ToutApp. What can you jump in and lend us some of your experience?
Yeah, I mean, I was just actually I just flew into Chicago this morning, and I was reading a couple of reports put out by Salesforce. They do their state of sales and state of marketing reports, and you know, the interesting commonality between the two, and I think there's a lot of commonalities obviously between this connection between sales and marketing that we're talking about with personalization and automation and scale, and you know, I mean, a lot of this is being pulled from, just as TK said, kind of the last 5+ years of the marketing automation world. But the number one reported priority by both marketing and sales was customer engagement. In fact, even in the case of marketing before new leads, it was customer engagement as reported in this report put out by Salesforce. And you know, I think that really goes to the heart of it for us. I mean, you know, for those on the webinar here who kind of know anything about our business or anything about ToutApp, you know, we're definitely different in a lot of ways. You know, our focus is really on providing content and information to allow the sales rep to make the decision that they feel is appropriate in terms of how to use that. So it's less about kind of automating or scaling communications and more just really trying to make an effort to provide them with information that, again, we think would be relevant or useful based on the leads they're going after, the accounts they're pursuing, competitors, you know, their own company, and so forth. And you know, just in terms of kind of how this really boils down for us in our experience, we have a great client of ours, Genesis Technologies. They're 10,000 employees, $1 billion plus in revenue. Quite an old company. I think they're over like 15 or 20 years old. But they did a very in-depth study with us and with LinkedIn Sales Navigator, which is a product their sales team uses as well. And we're able to attribute kind of how personalization led to increased engagement on the part of prospective buyers, and then how that ultimately affected like real kind of hard foundational priorities such as, you know, pipeline win rate and deal size. So I think you know, just as TK said, this industry of kind of sales enablement technologies, of which we are a part, of which ToutApp's a part, we're all kind of moving towards this, you know, this new horizon of personalization and scale and all these sorts of things. But you know, just as we kind of discussed at the outset, there, you know, while there's always going to be a need for scale, you know, I think there's always also going to be a need for the salesperson. I don't think any of this technology or solutions really disintermediates the actual person. And you know, so long as we have a person involved, and so long as there are companies, you know, pushing products that are big ticket prices or long sales cycles, you know, we're definitely going to have a need for more relevant content and kind of personalization. So that's how we kind of look at the two things together. I mean, again, for us, it's more about kind of enabling the rep to be able to make better decisions on their own, but also acknowledging that virtually every company we work with uses other solutions like ToutApp or LinkedIn Sales Navigator or other things that provide scale or, you know, fill another hole that is relevant to that particular business.
Okay. TK, I have a question here coming in from Paul. It says, I like your blended approach to selling depending on the tiers of selling. In your option, what's the difference between, oh, sorry, I think he meant what's in your opinion. What's the difference between personalization selling versus customized selling? You want to take that one, TK?
Yeah, I'm happy to take it. So so just so I understand the question, what's the difference between customized selling and personalized selling? Is that right? Can you hear me?
Sorry, I had an issue on my end. Yes, the answer is yes.
Okay. Honestly, I don't know what the difference would be. I think that it's very easy to overcomplicate this stuff. Customizing, personalizing, I think they're all the same. What's the goal, right? The goal is, how do I make an impression on this person that I'm communicating with and communicate value and communicate their need to buy and convince them that my solution solves their problems, right? And when we're talking about personalization, all we're talking about is how do you get the most relevant piece of information in front of the buyer so that they raise their hand and say, oh my God, you get me. I get, like, that's me. How do you solve this? That's it.
Right.
And so whether you call it personalizing or customizing, I think that this is a ricochet reaction to an era where marketing automation just blasted a bunch of repetitive emails and flooded inboxes. And so now everyone's talking about personalization. And that's why prospecting teams are being built. And that's why ToutApp is being used for a process. And that's why EveryoneSocial is being used for relevant content. We are having an allergic reaction to repetitive marketing automation emails. And that's where all this personalization comes into play.
Got it. Okay. So you've got something on design messaging here. I'd love to hear what you have to say here.
Yeah, and you know, I think this actually really touches upon what Cameron was talking about. The thing is, something like a ToutApp just tells you you should email this person, then call, then follow up, or in the sales process, here's the relevant piece of messaging. And at the end of the day, how do you actually make messaging very impactful? How do you make sure that it gets your point across? How do you make sure it moves the deal forward? How do you make sure it generates pipeline? It comes down to two things. The first is logistics. That's what we focus on. The logistics are on how many touches, what time, is it a certain stage of the sales process? Being able to figure out and map out that in order to generate pipeline, I need to call 5 times and send an email 10 times, or I need to share this case study when they're evaluating alternative vendors in the sales process. Like, being able to figure out those logistics is half the battle of personalization. The other half of the battle is content. And I think Cameron is much more equipped to talk about that piece. The only thing I'll say is if ToutApp is the gun, content and EveryoneSocial would be the ammo. If you have great content, you can arm your reps with having smart conversations that are personalized to drive the sales process forward. And you need both. We need a clearly defined logistics strategy, how many touches, at what time, what stage of the process, and then you need really great content to actually drive the sales process forward.
Makes sense. Makes sense. So it's really it's leveraging technology to make the whole process more efficient and quicker for the sales reps. Makes tremendous amount of sense. Okay. Just as you're moving forward, TK, I'm just going to offer to all of the participants that are with us here, if you have any questions, just go ahead and put them in the question box, and I will read it out to Cameron and TK here. So please, TK, please continue. Hi, TK.
Cameron, I don't know if you had any thoughts on the content side of things.
Yeah. No, I love the gun and the ammo analogy. That's good. I haven't heard that one before. But yeah, no, that's exactly right. I mean, you know, just as you know, I'm sure is the case with ToutApp. You know, we live in an ecosystem in every company that we work with all sorts of different solutions. I mean, we've got, you know, a CRM, undoubtedly, you know, more often than not it's Salesforce or Dynamics, a solution like ToutApp, potentially a prospecting solution, you know, potentially LinkedIn Sales Navigator, and then, you know, maybe us providing that content. And, you know, again, I think our hypothesis with content that fortunately has really kind of proven itself out is just that, again, it goes back to what TK just said, what we said at the beginning, and I think it's something that we all just kind of implicitly understand. You know, if you have something relevant to say to someone, Again, it could be a piece of content that you're summarizing in an email, or a link that you're sharing to someone, or something that you're even posting publicly. It just has that much more of a chance of getting a reaction or a response. I mean, that's just like, marketing 101, right? But again, a lot of this kind of historical marketing practice and approach is now making its way into the sales world, which is, of course, why we're here talking about this. But again, just as TK said, just as you have the automation, you have to have the content. I think just as if you have the content, you have to have some level of logistics, as he put it. And I think the interesting thing around content is, again, kind of when we get into some of the more detailed stats. And if anyone's curious, I'd be happy to provide some more information on this. But just the particulars around when someone is pursuing a prospect, posting something on social media or directly messaging them, what is actually the difference in terms of sales cycle length, in terms of their likelihood of actually winning that deal, if they post something relevant that potential buyer actually interacts with versus if they don't. And we found it to be pretty significant. So again, we see content as just being a critical part of the equation, and I think many of the same kind of challenges or future opportunity that we're looking at is, again, similar to probably what ToutApp's looking at, in the sense that it's taking content and other bits that can be used for purposes of personalization and just making it that much more intelligent, that much smarter, so that as a rep, as an inside rep, an outside rep, whatever your role, that you have access to that information right when you need it, and that it's very highly relevant, and something that is also portable, that could be used regardless of what the kind of logistics framework is.
Yeah, what I wonder on this webinar, at least, how many people are sales leaders versus marketing leaders? Ron, do you have a view on that? My guess is it's mostly sales leaders, right?
Yeah, unfortunately, I have names. I don't have titles, unfortunately, so I don't have that visibility.
Okay. Well, my guess is mostly sales leaders. I think there's going to be a massive shift in the relationship between sales and marketing in the coming years. I think that traditionally, you think of marketing and you're like, hey, make the website look better, or you say, where are my leads? I need better leads. I think that sales leaders very soon and are quickly realizing the power of really great content and how it can accelerate the sales process. And I think that over the next few years, really smart sales leaders are going to be booking meetings with their heads of marketing and saying, what is your content strategy? Because they're going to figure out, if you can get marketing to create thought leadership content, if you can get marketing to create case studies that are really, really compelling, like using video instead of one-page PDFs, if you can get your marketing team to create content that are data research insights based on your own platform, and you can then get your reps to share that content across the sales process or on LinkedIn or on Twitter, and that is going to move the needle so much in terms of accelerating a sales process, in terms of generating pipeline, in terms of outbound prospecting, all of it, even customer retention. And so I think that there's going to be a massive shift that's going to happen over the coming years, where sales leaders are going to start to realize just how powerful content is. And if they had to pick on 5 prioritized marketing automation leads versus 5 new pieces of content on a monthly basis, they would choose 5 new pieces of content, because they know that if they can get their reps to share really great content on LinkedIn and Twitter, the leads will come. And that's going to be a really powerful shift that's ahead.
Yeah, I want to add one thing to that real quick, because I 100% agree with what TK just said. And I think at the heart of it is really just this massive opportunity that sales has in front of them right now. And at least from our view, a major part of this driver is that prospective buyers, and this goes for both B2C and in particular B2B, which is obviously our focus, they trust employees and peers far more than they trust companies. I mean, if you go by Edelman's numbers, prospective buyers trust employees of a company roughly 2 times more than they trust the brand. And, put on top of that the fact that, salespeople are born networkers, and that, the networking options in the year 2017 are just immense, right? I mean, everyone has thousands of connections between their public social profiles, between their private networks and their address books and all that kind of stuff. And, the degree to which you can actually unlock those people, as TK was saying, to, not only just help to promote the content, but, use it in a more effective manner to actually share with their networks, to expose their networks to them, to that content, it produces huge benefits for that company, for the reps, both in terms of sales ROI and marketing ROI. So, again, we just see like people at the center of this universe. I think sales is in really the catbird seat, and a lot of it just comes down to the fact that buyers of all types, no matter if you're talking about $1 million+ deal down to something that's much more transactional, they trust people far more than they trust brands.
Right. So guys, just in the interest of time, I do have a couple questions here. It is in regards to communications for inbound and outbound, but I'm going to hold off because I think you may be answering those questions coming up. And for those of you who've asked the question, if it's not answered, I will ask it when these gentlemen are done. Go ahead, TK.
I think we can keep moving forward. What we also wanted to highlight is content is important. Having a plan is also important. Thinking about particularly in prospecting, where personalization is important. Whether you're dealing with an inbound lead or a target account or an outbound lead, you want to have a plan, and this is what ToutApp really excels at. And what we usually say is for an inbound campaign, these are people that are highly engaged, and so you want to have a very quick cadence of reaching out to them with a mix of phone and email and even social if you prefer. Not every industry vertical is active on social, but some are very active, so it just depends. And so this is a scenario where in something like a ToutApp, say you have an inbound lead coming in, you can configure in ToutApp to say on day 1, I want you to send this email with this piece of content and also make a phone call. On day 2 and 3, I want you to send these pieces of email. On day 4, send an email and make a phone call. And all of these can be manual emails, automated emails, or personalized emails. You can pick.
Okay.
And the reason this is powerful is that it gives you a plan on how you're actually going to execute on a personalization strategy or an automation strategy. It's very thoughtful, it's very laid out, and it's codified into the software. Whereas traditionally, you just pass it on to a rep, and reps essentially just do their best to follow up using a certain process, but it's not automated, it's not facilitated for them, so it doesn't work very well.
Right, right. So what I see here is the opportunity to kind of think of a penetration cadence beforehand and then lay that out for the customer. That's fantastic. And is this, you obviously can customize that per account?
Yep, you can create campaigns for specific titles. You can create campaigns for specific types of industry verticals, and then you just drop in a set of people, and you can add them right from Salesforce, and then it all gets facilitated for you. And it can be email, phone, we have a dialer baked in, we have email baked in, or it can be social. You can connect on LinkedIn or send emails. All of it is facilitated for you. And that way, instead of best case scenarios that you hope for, you can actually give your reps a structure on how to follow up on an inbound lead with the right mix of personalization and automation.
Okay. Makes a tremendous amount of sense. And for outbound, I guess in that case the calls would be initiated by the rep, but I see you've got a few more things in here.
Yeah, and so in this case, the previous one was a highly engaged buyer, maybe a tier 2 or tier 3 account. You can do a lot more automation, and you can just let it run. For an outbound sales campaign, the buyer is not really aware. This is a tier 1 account, and so you really want to be personalized. You want to send an email, and then what you can also do in Tout is create custom tasks. So instead of just an email, it can be a task that says, I want you to go research their website, look at their latest PR press releases, look at their latest financials, and then send a personalized email articulating how that we can impact their bottom line. And so for an outbound campaign, you can be a lot more precise, and you can say, oh, I also want you to connect then on LinkedIn, and then I want you to send an automated email, but make a phone call, and then send a very personalized email. So this can all be very configurable so that you can run a campaign for a tier 1 target account that's super personalized across multiple channels.
So I see a question here. Kind of seems like a really good spot to put it in from Paul. He says, in an overly communicated marketplace, how many touches are required to make that personalized connection? Have you seen anything, any averages, any medians, anything that you can share with us that seems to be a best practice in that regard?
From our data, it's 8 to 10 touches minimum, particularly for outbound.
Okay.
It works just like advertising. If you just take out one TV ad and never run it again, your marketing campaign isn't going to work. Advertising works when people keep seeing your brand and your messaging and the person and starts to forge some sort of familiarity, and then they engage with you. Unless, like, you have an offering that's just so differentiated and compelling. The subject line says, I will triple your revenue guaranteed in 3 days or your money back. And I've done it for these 3 companies, that's a very compelling sell.
Yeah.
You probably get something on the first touch, but in general, 8 to 10 touches is what we've seen.
Yeah, if you find one of those, forward that email to me, will you? would love that guarantee. I see another one here that kind of pertains. It's from Christian. He says, regarding logistics, can you recommend a sequence of emails, calls, socials, etc. for mid-tier target with mid-personalization customization? So have you seen anything where, the cadence of how many emails, how many calls in that minimum of 9 touches? Have you seen any best practices there that seem to work better than others?
Yeah. We've actually published a whole framework around this. If you go to the website, we call it the 5x5 method. So you go to this website called 5x5method.com. There's a complete PowerPoint video explaining how to do the 5x5 method. And it's essentially 5 touches, which you can extrapolate over a 5-day or 5 incremental periods. And the framework, the beauty of the framework isn't about just calling and emailing them and saying, hey, do you want to buy now, which is what most people do. It actually follows a very thoughtful way of where you introduce yourself first, and then you provide some value, and then you ask for feedback, and then you go in for the sell. So there's a structured way of building a relationship over 5 touches, and then you can expand that out to multiple touches. So go to 5x5method.com. and you'll see our full recommendation around the framework that we suggest.
Okay, for those of you on the webinar, I just put 5x5method.com in the chat box, so that should help you as well. Okay, so I think that brings us to the questions. Do you have any questions? Thank you, Daryl. Daryl said, great webinar, guys. As we wrap up here, do we have any questions from any of the attendees about what we've covered today? You've got TK and you've got Cameron online. Last chance to ask them anything you want about ToutApp, about EveryoneSocial, or about really customizing and personalizing. I see great use of time. Thanks, guys. Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Paul. You guys are really, they really appreciated TK and Cameron. Thanks very much. Very insightful from Paul. Awesome. Okay, I don't see any other questions.
We'll take that as a compliment. We covered everything.
Yeah, there's a whole lot of thank yous, and it was great coming in. So thanks to all the attendees. Thank you, TK and Cameron. That was awesome, very insightful, and I definitely want to take another. We're already using EveryoneSocial. I definitely want to take another look at ToutApp. You've definitely piqued my interest, TK. So want to have a chat with you offline about that as well.
Absolutely, we'd love to have you on.
Okay, guys, and once again, it's 5x5method.com, ToutApp, and EveryoneSocial. Thanks for attending, and we are recording this session, and we'll make it available to you guys as well. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.